Hey guys, welcome to my worst films of 2020. 2020 has truly been the year of years, with so much disappointment in the film community, with so many delays and pushbacks and cancelizations of movies and movies being put from theaters to streaming. It's been a wild time to be a movie fan. And through all that, we have these terrible, crappy movies that are released that we have to eventually try to put on our worst films of the end of the year. And when it comes to 2020, there was actually a lot less worst films that I saw this year than I've seen in the past couple of years that I've been doing videos here on the channel. So that was quite the blessing, but nonetheless, there was enough to make a top 10 worst here on the channel. So we're going to be discussing those today, starting with my dishonorable mentions. And our dishonorable mentions are Doolittle, The Grudge, Cats and Dogs 3, Paul's Unit, Brahms the Boy 2, and Like a Boss. Congratulations to those films. You did not make it to the worst films of 2020 here on my list, but you were mentioned, and so that means you must pay the price. You were awful. But now, going into the rankings proper, we start with our number 10 worst film of 2020, which is The Turning. This is definitely the worst adaptation of The Turning of a Screw that we got this year. We also got The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was significantly better than this film. Not only was this film just terribly acted and terribly made, it wasn't scary at all, and the only good thing that I could say about it is Mackenzie Davis's performance it's there, it exists, but everything else around it is just not that great. The ending itself is extremely disappointing and just not a very good film, but it's definitely not the worst thing that I saw this year. It's close to being just an average, basic film, but it has just those slight little things that hold it back. At number 9, we have Songbird. Now, I know a lot of people that will probably be putting this a lot lower on their list because of the whole idea that this is based on the pandemic that we are in today. Taking place in 2023, yeah, this film is not very good, but it's mostly just dumb. Like, really, really stupid. And I couldn't get offended by this because the movie just wasn't taking itself that seriously, and it was just a really dumb idea that was probably thought and put together in an afternoon, and I can't get too mad at this film. Yes, I guess it does exploit the pandemic, but really, with all the other films that I saw this year, I had a lot more that made me way more mad than this film. This I could sit down and at least watch and kind of laugh at. But yeah, this movie was not very good. One of the worst films I've seen this year. But next one. At number 8, we have After We Collided. I freaking hated the first After. I hated that movie so much, and this one is even worse. The characters are so unlikable. It's not sexy, it's just pretentious in so many different ways. I hate the main characters, especially the main guy in particular. I just cannot stand him. He is just awful. The acting in this is not very good. The only shining light in this is Dylan Sprouse, and the reason I like Dylan Sprouse in this movie is because I like Dylan Sprouse and I haven't seen him in forever. But yes, this is just awful. It's toxic. It's not romantic at all. I just overall really disliked this film. At number 7, we have The Wrong Missy, yet another Adam Sandler produced film for Netflix, and I really could not stand this movie. I found it so frustrating with all the characters in it that were just awful, especially the Wrong Missy herself, which is just abysmal to listen to, and I freaking hated this movie from beginning to end. The only thing that I kind of chuckled at. I chuckled twice through this movie, and it was because of Rob Schneider, of all people, making me laugh because he did a stupid voice and he punched a shark in the face. That is the level of comedy that this film has that will kind of make you laugh. I hated this film so much. I've not really watched that many Happy Madison films, and I'm glad I haven't because I feel like a lot of stuff will just be much worse. This isn't the worst of the Adam Sandler movies that I have seen, or that he's produced, but it's down there. At number 6, we have Fantasy Island. Boy, oh boy, what a misguided mess of a movie. From the director of Truth or Dare, which was a film that was a real guilty pleasure of mine. I thought that movie was so freaking hilarious, but this is just really bad and offensive, and it's offensive to, like, my brain cells, because I'm pretty sure I lost quite a few when watching this. It's just really lazy and stupid. The acting's really, really bad. The concept of turning this series that people watched into a horror movie, it's not inherently a bad idea, but you know what? You have to make it good, and they just did not make it good at all. I was really frustrated by this movie, and when I finished watching it, I was like, yeah, this is one of the worst films that I've seen this year. It's definitely going to be very low on the list. At number 5, we have 365 Days. This was a Netflix film that was released that is basically a foreign 50 Shades of Grey, but I feel it is much worse and much more toxic, and I don't think it's as bad as people say it is, but the fact that it is on this list, yes, it is really bad. It is really toxic. The characters are just awful, especially the main guy in this, who is some drug lord kingpin guy that is forcing this woman to fall in love with him. And it's just so toxic, and I guess the cinematography in this film's alright, but the music choices are just frustratingly stupid, and just the premise itself is downright dirty, and it frustrated me and it annoyed me, and I really did hate this film. Not as much as some people have, but yeah, this is definitely one of the worst films I've seen this year. At number 4, we have The Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. This was the first movie I saw of 2020, and it is, yeah, one of the worst things I have seen this year. From the same director that brought us The Haunting of Sharon Tate, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I was surprised to say that this is not as bad as that movie, but it is still just downright dirty and disrespectful when watching it. The only good thing in it is some of the acting is okay, at least, from the main girl, but everything else, it's just really disrespectful, and it puts a horror twist yet again on an actual tragedy, and it exploits a tragedy, and it's just awful. I really, really hated this film. And at number 3, we have Bobbleheads the movie. You have probably never heard of this film, but I have, and I watched it on Netflix, and it was a nightmare to watch. Not only the animation, but the way the characters just bobble along, and it is really freaking creepy. And you know what makes it even more sad? It's from the co-director of Beauty and the Beast and The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Atlantis: The Lost Empire. That is really, really sad. I hated this movie. It's got, a lot of celebrities in it, but, they can't save this script with terrible animation. It's basically a Toy Story knockoff, and it's really, really bad. I freaking hated this movie from beginning to end. There's really nothing redeeming about it. This is one of the worst animated films I have ever seen. I do not ever plan on watching this ever again. Thank God. Next one. At number 2, we have Homeward. I debated putting this movie on the list, but it was something that I did watch. It came out in 2020. It is a direct-to-video movie made by the Asylum, and if you could guess just by the title itself, it is a ripoff of Onward. And the people that made this, they really analyzed that Onward trailer to make an extremely cheap animated film that is just so lifeless and devoid of any emotion. And I was impressed that it was made or animated by a single person. So, I gotta give them props there, because I think the beginning of the film has some potential for a person animating a feature film, because I thought it was, passable. But the rest is just stock dull, and the characters are frustrating and horrible. And yeah, this is one of the worst animated films I have ever seen. It's a cheap cash grab that is just using assets from a much better movie. I hated this movie so much, and it's definitely one of the worst animated films I've ever seen. And it's the first Asylum animated film that I've ever seen, and I from what I hear, this is probably the better of them, but I guess not by much. And at number 1, we have Trump Card. Yes, putting this on my list probably kind of shows where I stand on the political spectrum. I don't like talking about politics on this channel, but when bad movies come around like this one, you just have to talk about it. I've talked a lot about Death of a Nation on this channel, which was Dinesh D'Souza's last documentary, and I hated that movie so much. It's one of the worst documentaries I've ever seen, and this is pretty much the same here. And the reasons why I hate this isn't just because I disagree with what he says, which I do. It's not because I have a different political view than Dinesh does, which I do, but it's because this documentary is just straight up propaganda, and Dinesh D'Souza is so dangerous to his audience. He is treating them like idiots by feeding them information that doesn't really add to a conversation. If you're going to make a propaganda film, or if you're going to make a documentary in general, you need to make something that will spawn a conversation, like the director Michael Moore, who is a propaganda filmmaker, but in this respect, Dinesh D'Souza is just a terrible filmmaker. There are moments where the acting is bad in a documentary because he reenacts scenes where he is, having a scene where he's being pardoned by Donald Trump, and it is awful. This was so frustrating to watch. In fact, I never even finished it. I hated this so much that I didn't finish it. I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew what he was going to say at the very end, so there was no reason to continue watching it. But I hated this. This isn't the worst Dinesh D'Souza documentary, but it's still one of the worst things I've ever seen. If he's not going to improve, he might as well just quit. I mean, this guy just doesn't get it, and you know what? He knows that. He's just trying to make a quick buck by exploiting the people that are going to be watching this, and that's really sick. And so that there is my top 10 worst films of 2020. But also, I will say, I do have a number 0 that I originally thought about putting on the list, but seeing as it's sort of in that in-between of, is it a 2019 movie or is it a 2020 movie, I decided just not to put it, and that movie is Verotika, which, if you have not seen Verotika, I'm not going to say too much about it, but you have to see it. This is a terrible, terrible movie, but it is so bad that it's good. It's like The Room. Every decision is just so bad, and it's so entertaining. The only problem I have with it is that the third story in it is not that entertaining, but the two stuff at the beginning is fantastic. So in a way, it is the worst film that I saw of 2020, but since I can't really determine if it is a 2020 movie or a 2019 film, it's gonna be at a number 0. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it. What were your worst films of 2020? Tell me in the comment section below, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.